Hi guys, today I'm with Annika Spalding, an author from the UK. I interviewed her before in one of my videos and we spoke about the link between writers and mental illness. You can click on the link below this video afterwards if you haven't watched it yet. Hi Annika, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for being on this show. It's always a pleasure to have you as my guest.
Well, it's really nice to come back, so thanks for having me back on.
And that's great. So today's topic is how to be a good writer. As a writer, I must admit that improving writing skills is a priority that can be challenging. And I know you've written 6 books and you're an award-winning author, right?
Mhm.
So you've got much experience as a writer to address our topic. Before we discuss today's topic, can you please tell us whether there's a difference between being an author and a writer? Because many people get confused when you tell them that you're an author and a writer.
Okay, I mean they're both the same thing essentially because you're doing a great deal of writing, but I would say an author is someone who has finished the book, haven't they? They finished writing the book. Whereas a writer, lots of people they write plays, they write scripts, they write all sorts of things. They're not necessarily an author, but they do write. Whereas I suppose an author is somebody who writes books. So even if you've written just your first draft, you're an author now. I wouldn't even say that you necessarily need to be published, but you've finished writing a book, and I think that's at that point you can call yourself an author.
Wow. So is writing a gift or a skill that anyone can develop?
Ooh, this is a very interesting question. I think it's a bit of both, personally. There are some people who just write beautifully, absolutely stunningly, and they may never have studied a course. They may never have studied anything that can enhance their writing. It's just something that just comes from them. But often it comes from them because they read a great deal, and so they learn in that way. But there are definitely some fantastic resources out there that you can use to improve your writing, as well as books that you can use to improve your writing. And I've got a writing degree, so there's a lot of my books that I did beforehand, but of course having a degree in creative and professional writing also means that the quality of my writing now is quite different to what it was before. But it's not to say that you absolutely need it, but if you do want to improve your writing in that way, it doesn't hurt to get those additional resources to help you, because they can't make you worse, can they? They can't make you worse.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's right. And what are the factors that make someone a good writer?
I think a good writer is somebody who reads a lot. I've spoken to many writers who don't, and I just think we need to be reading because it helps us understand structure of books and stories and different genres as well. But it's also a really good way to find out what is currently trending, what's currently on the market and interesting. And we learn as well. We learn like story flow. I don't know if you find this yourself, but I know when I read a book, my brain's automatically trying to figure out what the plot is because I read as a writer, and it certainly has it has its benefits. So definitely reading, and reading books of interest, but also reading books about writing. A fantastic book to read is Stephen King's On Writing, which you will see widely recommended. And it's like part memoir, part insight into how he does it. And it's just brilliant read. So definitely reading. I can't remember what the first thing I said. Writing, just trying. But also, I think a good writer as well isn't somebody who decides that they are the best writer ever and never seek to improve their craft. A good writer is somebody who is always looking at improving, always looking at editing. You could write a book and still 10 years later feel like you could just change this bit and you could just change that little bit. And I feel like a writer's brain, we want to edit, we want to refine the story, we want to define it, and it's having that eagerness and that curiosity and being intrigued in how can I make this story better. And I think if you don't have that, if you really are of the opinion that your writing is the best, it would be interesting to see what your writing does look like, because I feel like we're always growing and changing and evolving. I don't think it wouldn't make sense. Nobody's the best. I'm sure even Stephen King has horrible writing days, you know, but he sticks at it, doesn't he? He's persistent, and he'll sit down when he's writing a project, and he'll sit down every morning and not move until he's written his word count. You know, he's very dedicated to that. So he has his process. And another mark of a good writer is, I think personally, is just trying different types of writing. You know, I know it's so easy to fall into this idea that you must only write in one genre, you must have a niche, but actually I feel like the mark of a good writer is being able to write in a number of different formats, whether that be you write a horror today and a poem tomorrow, or you write a blog next week, a book the week after, or a play. I feel like it's a really good thing to explore the different types of writing, because in that you define your own writing style and you get a bit more confident. But at the same time, you may also discover that you're really good, or that you really enjoy a particular area, and for that period of time you might want to explore that further. So just being genuinely open-minded but willing to have a go at something that you haven't done before.
Wow, that's so good. And what, in your opinion, are the most important elements of good writing?
Good writing, good spelling and grammar, good flow, just a nice flow. Good writing doesn't read as writing. So if I was to read out writing, it shouldn't sound like somebody wrote it down, it should sound like someone's speaking, so really fluent. And again, depending on what it is, it should be engaging, you know, should really capture the attention. So for example, for a book, my general rule is the first line should grab my attention, at least the first page, because if it doesn't, why am I going to continue? If you get to chapter 3 and it's still boring, it's not a good sign, you know. But it's going to be different for everybody. But, you know, in the first couple of sentences should make somebody want to read more. You shouldn't give away your whole plot in the beginning. You shouldn't be telling everybody at the beginning what's going to happen. Don't tell your readers it's raining outside, you know. Maybe show them and just say she stepped outside and put up an umbrella, you know. I didn't say that it's raining, but I created an idea that, oh, it must be raining. She's got an umbrella. So you kind of paint the picture, you use your words to illustrate a picture and show without telling. It's really important.
Wow, wow. And what's the most difficult part about writing for you?
Just self-belief most of the time. My writing's good, personally. I think it's quite good. And I'm always quite happy with it at the end. But while writing, I'm often like, this is awful. This is terrible. I can't finish this. I can't do this. All that self-doubt. But I have a process. And so, you know, I will continue. I will write what I need to write. But then I'll leave it. And then I'll come back. And then I can kind of like see it in different eyes. And it looks different and it feels different. And then I'm happy with it. It's just that in that process of creating, I was battling self-doubt to create this. And I think that's something that all writers experience anyway. We're so doubtful of our work in the process. And it's only when we've written it and we've put it away for a little while and we come back to it, we're like, oh my gosh, this is good. Who wrote this? And it was you, you know. So I feel like sometimes it's necessary to understand your process. So I know that while I'm writing most things, I'm not going to like what I'm writing. And I know that if I put some distance between myself and this piece of work, when I come back to it, there's a good chance I will like it, or at least I will see the parts of it that are good and edit the other parts of it until I'm happy with what it is. So it's about knowing your process, really.
Wow. What are some of the bad habits a writer should avoid?
Bad habits that the writer should avoid: over-explaining anything, using cliches, although cliches have their, they play their part, but if you're always using cliches, it robs you of the opportunity to create original writing and original text. And that really is good writing, if that you can create, you know, metaphors and similes that we're not already familiar with, but that still gives that same effect. And I think writing like that is, you know, often just breathtaking. Really poetic writing is the kind of writing I love to read. Sorry, what was the question again?
What are some of the bad habits a writer
Oh
should?
yeah. So yeah, so over explaining. Oh, my mind's gone blank. This is it. I just know so much stuff that about writing that I love.
Yeah,
Yeah, cliches. So just with the cliches, you know, it's not to say don't absolutely use them, but there is a time and a place for them, and just rather than using what kind of example can I give you as a cliche that's often used? Be it as right as rain, or you know, don't worry, be happy, things like that. Common phrases that we are likely to use that are easily recognizable, but actually it's a bit lazy if you keep using those as a writer, because actually a good writer will create their own text to convey that meaning. Another bad habit is just spelling and grammar, really. I
yeah,
think sometimes we're so eager to finish a piece of work and we're just so happy that it's done. And
yeah,
in that moment, we will read it and edit it, and then we'll press publish, or we'll do whatever we need to.
yeah.
But actually, it's okay to like, have a process of it. Don't focus on writing it, finishing it, publishing it today. Write it, come back to it in like a week or so and reread it and edit it, because it's, for me, and I can relate to this, for me it was enough that it was finished. I never wanted my writing to be perfect.
Yeah.
Whereas a few years down the line now, actually I know when I've read other pieces of work with spelling mistakes or grammar errors that could have been easily changed if they've just proofread it, but because they were so eager to get it out, it means that now when I experience it, that's what I'm noticing. And for me, I feel like if the only person is the one thing that someone can take away from something that you've written is that there were spelling errors all over the place, it takes away from the experience of the writing itself, doesn't it? So, you know, give yourself a chance and just edit and spell check, and you know, use the tools that are available to you, but also have a process so that you do that on a separate day.
Oh. And you did mention that writers should read a lot. So how does reading affect the way we write?
Well, I suppose we indirectly and maybe subconsciously sort of absorb the knowledge that there is around story structure, you know, chapters layout, plot building, character development. You know, in a way we learn, especially for example if it's a fiction book, we learn what we like about that, you know, a sudden twist, something that we didn't see coming, the little clues throughout the text. And so if you were somebody who was then interested in writing their own fiction story, some of these things you may have picked up subconsciously, and so it might be reflected in your writing. And of course, if you read often, your spelling and grammar improves because you're used to seeing it, so you model it when you write. And yeah, I just think it's good to read. I mean, I think it's really weird if you write but you don't read often, because if you don't read, why do you want other people to read your stuff?
Exactly. And what are some of the habits a writer should develop to improve their writing skills?
Planning your writing, just planning it. I know a lot of writers will sit down and just go with whatever idea pops into the head, and there's definitely merit in that. But
Yeah.
it's okay to have a bit of a plan, and there are so many different ways to plan stuff. But even if you had some bullet points, you decided that you wanted to write a story, you wanted it to raise the issue of domestic violence and family breakdowns, you could make a few ideas down. And so when you're writing the story, you can always check to make sure that you're on track and that you're not wavering off, which is also key because you don't want, when people are reading it, to not really know what it's about either. So planning is really good. Setting aside time to write. And I know that it's so easy for us to think, you know, I'm going to wait until I'm rich and I'm not working and then I have all the time in the world to write. But actually, you don't need all that time. And if you had, you'd probably find other stuff to do. So a really great thing to do is just to make the most of every day that you get. So if you do have a full-time job, or you have children, or both, you know, even if you had half an hour in the evening while you was waiting for your dinner to cook, you know, you could make a few notes there. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. The main thing is about getting the idea out and making use of the time that you have. And it might be that you do that throughout the week, and maybe on a Sunday morning you always free, so that maybe that morning you use to type up all the notes that you gathered in the week. And so it's really being clear about what your process is, but also being realistic with your weekly routine, because some people are really ambitious and they're like, I'm going to write for an hour every day, and a lot of people can do that. But if you can't, wouldn't it be better to say, I'm at least going to write for an hour a week? It feels a little bit more achievable. So it's just being realistic, and rather than having, you know, a maximum, you might say to yourself, I'm going to write 4,000 words a month. That's what I'm going to do. But actually, what would your minimum be? You know, maybe your minimum could be, I'm going to write at least 1,000 words a month. So if you hit that, that's amazing. And if you go above that, even better. But do you know what I mean? So a lot of it's about adjusting the way that you look at this stuff, adjusting your perspective, adjusting your mindset around it, but also being realistic with your availability and knowing what your process is. Because, you know, you want to write because you want to write well, and you want to finish your writing projects and do stuff with them. So actually, what can you implement in your weekly routine to make sure that you do that successfully?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think negative feedbacks or reviews can discourage writers or help them improve?
Both.
Okay.
um it's really brave of us as writers to write something and then want to present it to the world and say, here is something I've written, because ultimately we are making ourselves vulnerable, aren't we, for the negative, for the harsh criticism, but also for the positive stuff, and you know, the constructive criticism. And there's a lot that can be taken from all reviews that we get, whether it's positive or negative. And often you can read the reviews and you can know quite clearly if they really understood it, you know, if they understood what you was writing. And if there was a running theme that where there were loads of comments saying, oh, I didn't know why you made this choice in this story, and a lot of people were saying that, actually that can tell you a lot about how you wrote the story. It wasn't clear for the writer, for the reader. So we can learn a lot from it as well. But also, this is why it's not a good idea to call your writing, you know, my precious babies and stuff, and get all personal with it, because it is something that you want to do well. And if you think it's so precious and delicate, and, you know, every comment anybody gives you is always going to hurt and affect you, and it will be more challenging to look for the lesson in it. But again, don't take it personally. You know, look for the themes. Is there a theme that pops up? Do people really dislike this character? Maybe I made them too you know, unlikable. Maybe I can revise that next time, and keep in mind this, because actually our readers can tell us a lot about our work as well, because we know the story. You know, it's been in our head for the longest time. We've written it, we've rewritten it, but actually somebody experiencing it for the first time can tell us a lot, because what we find out then, did we convey what we initially set out to convey? You know, did our storytelling work? And if it didn't, that's great, because people will let you know, which means that then you can use that information to do a better job next time. So it's all about learning.
Yeah, that's right. How should writers do research for their books?
Google's free.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much research out there. Go to a library, you could do a survey depending on what you're writing about. There's so much information available to you. Even YouTube, you know, just type in a question what you want to know more of, and don't be afraid to reach out. So for example, if you were writing I don't know, a story about somebody who was admitted into hospital, but you weren't clear on what happens when they get to hospital, you know, find somebody on LinkedIn, reach out to somebody, do a bit of networking, and just say, I'm writing this story. I just want to ask a few questions. Would you mind if I buy you a coffee? Something like that. You know, take the initiative. Don't just make it up. Take the initiative, because there's the thing as well. If you don't do your research, and somebody who is familiar with that reads it, and they'll be like, well, that's not how it works. That's not true. They don't buy into your story then. You know, you don't get credibility then. So just, information is out there. Start with Google, you know, start with your local library, start with people, events, charities, you know, even TV programs and documentaries. There's all sorts of research you can do.
Yeah. And I came across some writers who find it difficult, to find their source of inspiration. So how can writers find their source of inspiration?
That's going to be different for everybody, so I can't really answer that question.
Okay.
But what I will say is that a good writer doesn't wait for inspiration.
Yeah.
A good writer is disciplined, because inspiration is wonderful, you know, it's a magical feeling, but you might wake up tomorrow feeling really demotivated and not inspired at all. And it doesn't mean that the original idea wasn't exciting enough or that you didn't do everything that you needed to do. It's just that's how you woke up. But you might have told yourself, I need to write for over 500 words. And where the discipline comes in is that you're able to still do the writing, even if you're not feeling inspired by what you're writing about right now. So focus a little less on being inspired, although it is, you know, it does have its merit, and focus more on how can I build in these really productive writing habits that makes me more disciplined with my writing, so I can get stuff finished rather than waiting to feel good about what I'm writing.
Yeah, that's right. So writing even when you don't feel like it. Yeah. And what mindset should a writer have to be a good writer?
Um, just someone who enjoys writing, and somebody who not necessarily is positive about their writing, because I know that so many writers aren't, but are always curious about stories and always interested in learning more, and really open-minded when it comes to the development of their writing as well, is really important. But it does help to kind of be on your own side when you're creating anything. So, you know, if you can master that part of you that is hard on yourself and actually become a bit of a fan and be your own cheerleader of yourself, I think that'll make it a lot easier for you to finish your writing projects and really get to a point that you know that you want to be.
Okay. And do you think someone can become a good writer by surrounding themselves with other good writers?
You can become a good writer by making sure you do your learning and that
Okay.
you write often and that you read. I don't think it's really dependent upon having other writers about you around you, because you could be in a room full of writers, but if you never write, or if you never practice, or if you never edit or read, your writing is not going to be good. So it's not about absorbing everybody else's writing skills, although it does help to be in contact with other writers because the conversations are different. But actually, it's a very solitary skill. You know, it's something that we do alone because it's only us in our head. And so, really focus on building that relationship with yourself, and understanding your processes and being responsible for making sure that you've got the information that you need, and taking accountability for how much you write and when you write. And, you know, that's really on you.
Yeah. And do you think it's important to be organized to be a good writer?
Not necessarily. There's some very disorganized writers out there. Some people can work within clutter, others can't. So, you know, whichever works for you.
Yeah. And what advice would you give a new writer, someone just starting out?
Have fun. Start a blog so you can start building up your own personal portfolio, and have a plan. And in terms of having a plan, just think about your writing career, where you'd like to see yourself in 5 years and in 3 years and in 2 years and such things, and look at what you can do to develop your writing by yourself, but also by applying for writer development programs, or a course, or getting a writing coach or something like that, because there's a lot that we can do by ourselves, but actually, you know, there's nothing wrong in learning how to do it from somebody else and
Yeah.
then using that knowledge and applying that to our writing. So just being really proactive about our growth, really. So that's why it's important to have a plan.
A plan, okay.
Mm.
And there are many writers out there who've got kids and find it difficult to balance writing and family. So can you give us some tips on how to balance writing and family?
Yeah, so just do it when they go to bed. when they go to bed. Or if they're occupied, it's about making use of those quiet moments that you get in the day. So it may not be hours upon hours of time, but you might have, you know, if you go to work, you might have 20 minutes while you're eating your sandwich to make some notes. You know, your children may visit family at the weekend, so you might have time then. And it doesn't have to be hours. Even you can write a lot in 15 minutes if you set yourself that task. If that's all you got, you would be surprised. So it's just using those little pockets of time that you get in the day, and not really obsessing over writing something that's perfect or even finishing what you're writing. The idea is just to get started. So rather than telling yourself, I'll wait till the kids are older, or I'll wait till they're at school, actually, we've all got a little bit of time every day.
Yeah.
And for the most part, a lot of my books were written while I was working full time with 2 children, and in some cases studying, and I still managed to write stuff. And I know it's hard, and none of it is easy, but if it's what you're here to do, you will make the time for it.
Yeah. So, who's your favorite author and why?
Dorothy Coombson, she's my favourite author because her story writing is just phenomenal. I just fall in love with her plots and her characters, and I'm always sad when her stories come to an end. And over the years, she's moved from real sort of romance kind of writing to more like crime fiction, and I quite like the progression. And I've met her before, and she knows my name. She knows I'm her fan. But her writing is just incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Annika, for sharing your knowledge with us. That was
Thank you.
nice. And I believe our viewers have learned a lot from you today. Guys, Annika published an amazing book titled She Writes. I strongly encourage you to get a copy of her book on the Amazon website. Thank you so much.